hello to those watching. This is Anthony bringing you coverage of UFC 323 from Las Vegas, Nevada this weekend. Here we'll be giving our early thoughts for the fight card with our official picks posted live on Dine Sports this weekend. This pay-per-view is the last of the year, headlined by two championship fights at flyweight and bantamweight. Merab Dvalishvili will rematch former champion Petr Yan in hopes of making his fourth title defense this year. So should be a very good one. Nick, before we begin breaking down this fight card, what are your thoughts on the event overall?
Yeah, last pay-per-view on the ESPN deal, last pay-per-view we're going to be covering for Dines this year. Looking forward to next year, but it's a good card, man. Top to bottom, some interesting matchups, two title fights two title fights with dominant champions defending. I believe they're the two longest tenured in the UFC, with Islam moving up. So really fun card, some interesting prospects, definitely a few underdogs I'm keying in on too. So looking forward to breaking it down with you.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I will say tough card to find the, betting angles really that I'd be looking for, but we will start off here with the main event. Merab Dvalishvili minus 500 betting favorite facing Petr Yan in this rematch, who could be had at plus 340, the underdog. I think this is an interesting fight. Merab, obviously, it's tough to, knock anything he has done here as of late. 4 times he's going out trying to defend this title in one single year. That's a feat that hasn't been accomplished before. And the wins to Umar Nurmagomedov, rematch against Sean O'Malley, and then his fight most recently with Corey Sandhagen, another dominant showing from the champion. Really tough to put up a resume that competes with Merab for Fighter of the Year here in 2025. And again, just somebody who, no matter who you're going to oppose him with, he has a style that's just so tough to deal with. Pressure throughout the entire fight, and cardio that very few athletes are able to match. The pace that Merab is able to put on his opponents over the course of a 3-round or over the course of these 5-round fights is even more impressive. Just from the start of each fight, moving forward, throwing his hands with more confidence now as the champion, and always a massive threat with the takedowns. We saw what he was able to do against Petr Yan in their first meeting, attempting all those takedowns, just constantly shooting, not allowing Yan to get any rhythm when it comes to his own elite striking offense. I mean, this is one of the guys at bantamweight that poses a threat to Merab just because of his knockout power, his ability to put together these incredible combinations, and his tight boxing. Elite Muay Thai. Yan is definitely a threat and somebody at bantamweight that, can knock anybody out. It's just going to be an issue for him if he does fall behind again against Merab, forced to defend takedowns in this fight. Normally Petr Yan, a slow starter, looking to find his range in each fight. This is an opponent he's already seen, so perhaps able to put his foot on the gas a bit more, quickly in this matchup. I just don't feel Merab is as safe a bet as in the more recent matchups we've seen him. And at minus 500, this is even a higher price than in some of those, matchups against O'Malley and against Nurmagomedov. So I'm not going to be rushing to bet Dvalishvili in the spot. I think Yan could certainly pose, some more threat here second time around. It appears to be in great shape. And I will say Dvalishvili throughout this week, another, tough weight cut for him, getting down to 125. He's somebody that does not waterload. He's just not hydrating from Tuesday to Wednesday to Thursday until weigh-ins. And yeah, as he's opposing a guy like Petr Yan, making a 4th tough weight cut in this calendar year, I fully expect Merab to win, but I'm expecting it to be a very competitive fight as these two meet for a second time.
Yeah, I think you covered it pretty well. We could talk a little bit about the first matchup, and there's news coming out this week, and credit to Petr Yan, because how often do these fighters lose a fight and then they come out and they give every single excuse? There's been reports that Petr Yan not only broke his hand in the fight, but he also came in with a torn shoulder. We're getting word this week as well. So that was by far the worst version of Petr Yan in that fight, and it came at a terrible time against the guy in Merab, who's obviously been a dominant champion. Several records were broken in that fight. Not only the number of takedowns, but also the number of takedowns defended. So Peter did do an excellent job mostly keeping the fight standing, and at striking range, I do think he's the much better striker. The reason I am still on Merab here, though, is that Peter's greatest strength is how he builds into fights. It's a cliche at this point, but everyone talks how he downloads the data. He waits to kind of watch his opponents. He often gives up the first and even the second round in 5-round fights and then takes over as they wear on. But the issue is against Merab, I mean, you can't really do that because his cardio is just otherworldly. I do think the line is kind of ridiculous. Like, we're floating around -3 to -400 right now. -400. ESPN, I don't know how much credit I give to that book, is at -500. This seems absolutely insane. All the value is on Peter. If you do have ability to bet maybe on a spread, you could take the +5.5, even +7.5, and get some value on Peter. But it's just impossible to fade Merab right now in this run that he's on. And if we watch the first fight, even an improved Peter is going to have some issues because while Merab wasn't getting all the takedowns, there were just no time in between them for Peter to really land his shots. So I do think we see a much closer fight. I do think in terms of styles, Peter is going to pose a real serious threat to Merab here. Obviously, Merab has taken on guys like Sandhagen and O'Malley, who are kind of long strikers, but Peter's a much better grappler or defensive wrestler, especially than those two. And while he doesn't really have that reach advantage, he's going to be able to kind of get in close with Merab, or maybe it'll be even easier to land that power shot that Corey and Sean struggled to find. So I don't know. I'm a huge Petr Yan fan, as you know. I do think he's one of the best fighters in the world, and I do think in terms of like aesthetics, his technical ability is as pleasing to watch as anyone's. Merab is kind of the opposite. He gets by on just sheer grit and will and pushing forward. Obviously, his skills have come a long way. So I'm not going to lie, I am tempted. The first time these two squared up, I did take Peter, and I did it with some confidence. He looks so bad, though. I just can't get that taste out of my mouth, and you have to wonder, how bad were these injuries? I don't think Peter's lying, because himself, like, he didn't even want to bring this stuff to the public. Like, the news about the hand came out, and then he quickly said, no, it wasn't an issue. Like, that's not why I lost. So again, credit to Peter, true fighter. I mean, very gracious in defeat. But I do think he's going to keep it close here. So maybe try to find that point spread, or maybe bet decision, or drop on split decision. I do like Merab, and if you are tying him into parlays, you'll be able to hedge out at the end of the card very easily, given the heavy plus number on Peter. So just keep that in mind and be prepared to do so. But I can't fade Merab. He's just on a historical run right now. He shows he does have the style to take on Peter here. And while Peter's going to make major improvements, I do think Merab's going to make some improvements here as well, at least in terms of strategy. So he'd be pretty dumb to strike more, but I do think maybe he looks for more top control. He maybe goes for a bit more position over submission, maybe a bit more aggressive on the mat. Maybe we see a little bit less scrambling. But again, if Peter was really as banged up as it sounds like, this could be a super competitive fight. He could be the value play of the year here in December on the last pay-per-view. But again, I've been burnt by Merab too many times. As much as I like Peter, I just can't make the pick on him, but I will say he's certainly the side in terms of value.
Yeah, and again, I really can't agree more. Picking Merab here, but definitely having some interest in, getting action in Yan one way or another at this number. He's the younger fighter, too, in this matchup, something to highlight. And again, as you say, Merab making adjustments to this fight, you got to think 14 rounds that him and Aljamain Sterling have shared inside the cage with Petr Yan. So having a game plan put together for attacking him, both successful in their previous 3 performances against him, shouldn't be too hard to know what to do in this particular matchup. It's just a matter of executing, and if, maybe Yan comes up, maybe Red comes up on the roulette wheel, this time after, 4 shots at these two. But yeah, definitely looking forward to the main event here this weekend. As much so, the co-main event, Alexandre Pantoja, -250, betting favorite in the spot against Joshua Van, who will be challenging for the flyweight title at just 24 years old. Gotta highlight Pantoja's 6th title fight here, facing another unique opponent. He has a style that tends to work against no matter who is going up against him. Really one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world. It was Alexandre Pantoja, and I think he's proven it to this point. Obviously, what he's capable of doing in the grappling should be what separates him in this particular fight against a very talented striker in Joshua Van. Pantoja with his black belt in jiu-jitsu, dominant, putting that jiu-jitsu on display in these recent fights, quickly securing takedowns against his opponents, driving them to the mat. with a lot of power. He's strong. He's big for a flyweight, man. And I think Joshua Van does stack up well, against him. Stands at the same height. We'll see it a bit in terms of his reach in this matchup. Pantoja is somebody who can get after it on the feet as well. Has power in his hands, good at landing counters, has trained for years and really developed into a much better striker himself. It would just be a matter of getting into a long-term brawl with a guy like Joshua Van, where I would worry about Pantoja taking a lot of unnecessary shots if these two are still striking in rounds 3 and rounds 4 and rounds 5. That being said, Pantoja has shown unbreakable chin, a guy who could really take that punishment and continues to move forward like a zombie. Excellent overall in terms of his ability to take a shot and then return with even better power. And I think that is what makes him a champion. I think he's, a bit too much for the young Joshua Van at this stage of his career, but got to highlight the challenger. Certainly excited for the future that's ahead for him. Beating Brandon Royval in his last fight, earning a performance bonus, for that showing. And honestly, just his career thus far in the UFC, very impressive. Getting better as his fights go later, really putting his hands together. And I'm excited to see what he can do as he adds more skills to his overall arsenal. But right now it's a boxing heavy approach from Joshua Van, and I don't think that's going to be enough to beat Pantoja. I'm really expecting the Brazilian to get to those positions on the mat where he can, suffocate Van, probably, securing a body triangle, backpacking him, one of the early few rounds, and likely securing a submission win. I think this is going to look a lot like how Pantoja finished out last year, closing out the final pay-per-view by finishing Kaya Sakura with an early submission. Kind of expecting the same thing here, but definitely excited for what lies ahead for Joshua Van. I'm sure he will have another title, opportunity down the line in his young career.
Yeah, if Van were to pull this off, he'd actually be the second youngest champion in UFC history behind Jon Jones. I don't really think he's going to be able to do it here, though. He's been on a great run. He's just an outstanding boxer. Does a good job mixing in the body work. Tremendous pressure, landing more than 8 significant strikes per minute, just absolutely ridiculous volume. And he can maintain that pace for many rounds. We saw it against Royval. But the one issue with Van on the feet is that he is extremely hittable. He does absorb more than 6 significant strikes per minute. And you said it. Pantoja's chin is tremendous. It's going to be very difficult for Van to just put him away with strikes. And Van himself, we've seen him put down by guys, KO'd by obviously Charles Johnson. And I don't really think Pantoja's going to knock him out here, but I think the gap on the feet isn't nearly as wide as the gap is going to be on the mat. Joshua Van only started training grappling in 2013. He said, or not 13, 2023. We've been covering UFC for Dines longer than he's been training his grappling, which is pretty funny if you think about it. I just think he's running into just a brutal stylistic matchup here. Pantoja big for a flyweight. Van honestly kind of small for a flyweight, albeit they're listed at the same height. And again, I do think just the gap in the grappling is going to be far too wide. As this fight gets extended, sure, maybe Van could land enough on the feet to pull away, but I think more likely than not, he's going to be taken down to the point where Pantoja's probably going to be able to find a submission, and if not, just secure round after round. I do like him to find the finish inside the distance. I just don't think Van's really seen that type of jiu-jitsu threat yet. I think Pantoja's ability to find the back takes and then secure that rear naked choke is world-class, regardless of weight class, obviously. And yeah, he averages nearly 3 takedowns per 15 minutes. But in a matchup like this, where it's very clear that that's the best path to victory, I think he's going to pursue it with some aggression. I do like Pantoja a lot here. To your point, Van is extremely talented. He's got a long, great career ahead of him. On the feet, he's going to be competitive. I just don't think he's going to be able to keep this fight standing long enough. And if I'm being completely honest, the odds in this fight should probably be what we're seeing in the main event. And maybe the main event should be what we're seeing here. So if those were flipped, I think maybe bookmakers were a bit more accurate in their pursuit here. But again, I'm on Pantoja. I like him inside the distance. I do think Van is extremely talented, though. If Pantoja doesn't come out and fight an intelligent game plan, aka pursue the grappling, he could be in trouble, but I have trouble not expecting them to do so. I think he retains his title once again.
Yeah, I also would pick Pantoja to win inside the distance, but the money line is the way to play this fight. He's going to be the one that I'm trusting to close out my parlays there on Saturday night. All right, moving on now. We'll look at another matchup between flyweights, this in the featured fight. Tatsuro Taira, -140, slight betting favorite here, facing the former champion Brandon Moreno, who could be had at +115. So yeah, two flyweights, once again, likely to factor into the, title picture, with Pantoja fighting the fight thereafter. Moreno already, opposed Pantoja, fought okay in that fight. Generally speaking, he is going to be a tough out for a lot of these younger up and comers at flyweight. But the particular matchup against Tatsuro Taira does pose some stylistic challenges for Moreno. Moreno is somebody who has 64% takedown defense throughout his career, and I think Taira is a young athlete that can capitalize, drive Moreno down to the ground, and when there, the key in this fight will be Taira maintaining and controlling those positions rather than allowing Moreno to scramble back to his feet, reverse him, or threaten in any real way. Moreno will be landing, the more accurate, more significant strikes throughout this entire fight, which will score favor with the judges. So it is going to be up to Taira to, sort of backpack him or, hold those positions for at least half of this fight if he does want to walk away the winner here. I think we've already seen Taira sort of tested in the spot and I hope learn his lesson. I'm going to be picking him in this matchup with Moreno. I think he's going to, know he can't mess around and allow the guy to reverse him a bunch on the mat. If he learned that lesson in that previous shot against Royval, that it's important to, completely extinguish the offense from the opponent across from him when he has these superior boxing like Moreno does. That's going to be key for Taira winning this fight. But Moreno's a dog. He's somebody that can always do it. He's somebody that's very tough to finish, and I would not expect Taira to easily submit. So can't have really much confidence at all when I am picking this one. I just do think he is going to be able to hold down Moreno for a good portion of this fight. Younger kid, but looking to be coming into his own, stronger, and probably going to be, appearing stronger than Moreno in a lot of those wrestling exchanges. Although Moreno does, always have confidence in his own grappling on the mat.
Yeah, this is a tough fight. I think if they ran it 10 times, it could go a different way every single time. Currently on the Moreno side, I do think that's where I'm going to end up too, just because he's been tested more extensively against a higher level of opponent. I mean, going into the Albazi fight for him, it was kind of a similar narrative. Like a lot of people thought Albazi would be able to kind of take him down consistently, but what people tend to underrate is footwork in the sport. And obviously Moreno doesn't have the best takedown defense, but he is excellent in scrambles, and more so than that, he has tremendous footwork, which makes it very difficult to kind of get in on his hips. I think that is obviously what his whole training camp had to revolve around here. It is the big cage, obviously, with this being a pay-per-view, and he is the much better striker on the feet. At the same time, Taira's the type of guy you could maybe find his back just standing. I mean, he could just crash into him and maybe find the right position, similar to what he did against Perez. But if the best version of Moreno shows up here, or even a really good version of Moreno, like we've been seeing against Ursay Albazi, I do think he has the skills to get it done. I do think Taira's going to be able to take him down, but I think the scrambling ability of Moreno is underrated, as is his own jiu-jitsu. We saw in the Figgy fights at times some of the best scrambles between those two when they were in their respective primes, and I think we could see similar moments here. So Taira can maybe take his back, steal a round or two, and pull it out that way. I have trouble seeing him submitting Moreno in this spot. But again, this is a fight I can see going either way. There is kind of a theme on this card. I mean, there's a lot of guys that are getting up there in age, taking on younger fighters, and it's like, which version of this fighter are we going to see? I think more likely than not, we see a pretty good version of Moreno here. So getting him at slight plus money does feel like value. By no means a confident play, but I think I'm going to have to take a shot on the underdog.
All right. Moving on now, let's take a look at this bantamweight matchup. Here we have Payton Talbott -280, the betting favorite against Henry Cejudo +220, and what is likely his final fight. Nick, what are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, so similar to the last fight, I mean, we're getting the older fighter here. Don't know which version of him we're going to see against the young and up-and-coming prospect. The difference here is just that Payton Talbott really hasn't seen anywhere near the level of competition that Cejudo has. So there are going to be question marks coming in. Like, obviously, this isn't going to be the best version of Cejudo. Obviously, whenever a fighter is discussing their retirement, and he has said this is a retirement fight, that's usually a bad sign. But I still think the skill gap here is pretty wide. And I think Henry's striking is a bit underrated. Obviously, Talbot is kind of a sniper from that range, but Cejudo never really been KO'd, and he has a tremendous chin. He's able to pressure and keep moving forward, and obviously the Olympic level wrestling is what he's going to need to land on here or lean on here to secure that win. I think he's going to be able to, and this line just seems kind of insane to me. I know Talbot's a prospect the UFC is looking to build, but this wasn't their first plan for Talbot. He had a bunch of other fighters that turned him down. He kind of worked his way towards the rankings and to the point that Cejudo accepted. And it's interesting. These two spent a lot of time training together last year. So Cejudo accepting this fight kind of tells me that he feels like it's the type of matchup he get the win in. Obviously, coming again off the loss to Yadong, didn't look great there, but he was competitive going into the later rounds. This is just a 3-round fight, which I do think plays to Cejudo's advantage, as his cardio does seem to be fading a little bit. And the one fight where Talbot looked terrible against Raoni Barcelos, obviously Barcelos, good striker. I mean, better jiu-jitsu than Henry, but not really the same level of wrestler. So I don't know. I can't help but take Cejudo here. I just think the line is disrespectful. Even in a retirement fight, I'm having trouble getting on Talbot's side. I also listened to his coach, Cejudo, Santino DeFranco this week. It's his last fight coaching ever as well. And he never talks about his fighters going into a fight. He doesn't want to be biased. He breaks down the fights like we do. And he said he thinks, I never say this, but I think Henry's going to absolutely kill him. I just think he's levels above. And these two, Henry and him, have been spending a lot of time together. They definitely know a lot about Payton given their time training with him. So I can't help but take Cejudo. I just think it's value. I mean, could Talbot outland him? Could he pull away in the later rounds? Certainly. But again, we're looking at plus 200 on a former double champ here. And he didn't look terrible his last fight. Obviously, he's past his prime, but he's still taking on a much higher level of opponent than what Payton's been seeing. So I'm going to take Cejudo here. Again, not the most confident play. That R-word retirement is usually a red flag, but I think coming in here, he's going to be competitive. Henry, obviously, medalist, champion, you name it. I mean, he's won his entire life. I think he wants to go out with a victory here, and I think he took this fight with some strategy in mind. So I'm going to be on Henry. I just like the value more than anything, but Talbot is a fun prospect and an excellent striker. I don't want to undersell him.
Yeah, I am picking Talbot in this matchup. I think ultimately he will win. I see what you mean regarding the value on the Cejudo side. And at this number, I certainly don't mind a play on him just for the price. But I cannot really get behind him here in what is going to be his last fight. You mentioned the word retirement, but it really looked like a retirement to me in Cejudo's last performance against Song Yadong. I was not impressed by that effort, and for him to finish in the way that he did after the eye poke, no longer fighting out the remainder of that bout, although he was behind. I'm not really convinced Cejudo has much left in the tank, and I think Talbot perhaps, in this matchup should just be able to stay at range, point fight with Cejudo. I don't think he's going to be pursuing the takedown extremely aggressively. Obviously, in the big cage, it's going to be hard for him to, stalk and, track down a outside striker like Talbot that does have good counters and can rely on his size when compared to Cejudo. Obviously, you mentioned as well the training together that these two have done very recently too. That just gives me huge pause when it comes to handicapping this fight and wanting to get any action. Yes, you say perhaps Cejudo knows it's going to be a win, but perhaps it's also these two are buddies, and Cejudo's just saying, "Oh, let me get a check against this kid here in what is going to be my last time out in the cage." I'm not really sure it's going to be a great effort from Cejudo all around, but I do think he's going to give it his all there early, and perhaps, sort of blow his load there, even if it is just a 3-round fight. Has not looked good in the latter half of his recent bouts. I give him a pass in the fight against Merab Dvalishvili, but other than that, really not going to be, confident here taking Cejudo in any shape or form, even though the price is attractive. I think Talbott can just sit on the outside, poke away, doesn't have to chase the knockout in this fight. And Cejudo is somebody who is going to be tough to finish. I will just mention too, has to mind himself in the clinch and in positions where Cejudo can be landing knees and elbows and things like that he definitely did not see in the training room. So yeah, picking Talbot ultimately to get his hand raised in this one, but not going to be betting him at minus 280. No way. The Barcelos fight too, that was just the start of this year. Not sure he could really correct the errors we saw there with his wrestling and with his cardio in that limited a time frame. All right, moving on now to the main card opener, a fight at light heavyweight between Jan Błachowicz and Bogdan Guskov. Błachowicz minus 130, the betting favorite, while Guskov could be had at plus 110. Who are you taking in this fight?
Again, it's the theme, at least of the main card. We get the old fighter here who was taking on the better competition, a former champion, taking on a pretty intriguing up-and-comer. I'm again going to be on the old dog here, and maybe this is an error, but Jan's looked pretty decent lately. I mean, he fought an extremely close decision against Olberg, an extremely close decision against Pereira, went to a draw against Goliath, and his style is kind of going to age well. I mean, he mixes everything in well. He has a really solid leg kick, which I think is what is going to be the difference in this specific fight. Guskov kind of running hot, in my opinion. I mean, Krylov ran into that shot that KO'd him, but Guskov, there's just so many question marks around him. Like, he could be amazing. He could be excellent, but he's shown flaws in these fights against kind of mediocre opponents. I mean, even losing early to Pauga before knocking him out, a guy no longer in the UFC, was spotty in the first round against Alexandre. And again, the Krylov KO, as impressive as that is, Krylov has since been KO'd again, just ran at him with his chin up there. Like, the results look excellent on paper, but when you actually watch what he's been doing, I mean, there's some holes there in his game. And stylistically, I think Błachowicz does everything that Guskov does better, except for Guskov's going to have a pretty big speed advantage. But Błachowicz, I mean, taking on guys like Olberg and Pereira, who have excellent striking and footwork, etc., this feels like a pretty big step down in competition for him. So I'm going to be on the Błachowicz side here. I also think he has grappling upside. I mean, outside of the Glover fight, he's been the better grappler in a lot of his matchups. We've seen him mix that in a lot, other than the Goliath fight, obviously, as well. But I can see that here. I mean, he took Pereira down a couple times, but seeing him fight so closely with Olberg, who people have pegged for the next title shot, Guskov coming off some nice finishes, but against much lower level of opponent. And again, that matters to me, maybe a little bit more than it should. Maybe we learned something on this card here. There is an 11-year age gap, which isn't a great sign, but in these higher weight classes, you can fight into your 40s, especially if you're as skilled as Jan Błachowicz. So I'm on Jan here. I think there's value on him. I don't feel great about it, obviously, given the age discrepancy. I mean, Bogdan does seem to be improving at a pretty rapid rate, but again, I just got to go with the old dog. I'm going to be on Jan once again.
Another difference between us here, I'm going with Guskov in this fight. I like the plus money again on Guskov, now winning 4 fights in a row since debuting in the promotion. He's won by finish in the first 2 rounds of each of these 4 straight fights, pressuring opponents early, really getting in their face, causing these exciting exchanges. I think Jan maybe is the rightful favorite in the spot. More technically sound, better with the leg kicks. Probably better if we do see a 3rd round play out in this fight. But I kind of disagree. He is starting to look his age at 42 years old. Proven to be durable, but the losses, yes, Pereira, Olberg, top tier.
I thought he beat Olberg.
I would disagree. I mean, I did not think so. I thought it was a good effort, but the style of fight there obviously lended it to a close decision at the end. I just think obviously proven to be durable, obviously going to hold his own in a lot of striking exchanges. So I'm not going to go against the model of consistency that Guskov has been on this red hot win streak. When he lands, these guys are going out, and that's very real at weight classes like this. I don't think he's a guy that I want to be fading. And I don't think he should be the betting underdog necessarily, given his just finishing equity. Guskov is a guy that I'll be playing in rounds 1 and 2 in this fight, although Błachowicz is somebody super durable and tough to finish. If he is going to be standing there, absorbing shots from Guskov, not able to use his lateral movement and move quite as quickly as this age. I think he's going to get overwhelmed. Eat these big combination punches from Guskov and be there to get hit. Not necessarily sure Błachowicz is going to be fighting for title aspirations again here at this stage of his career. He may still think so, but this would be a fight that could perhaps prove otherwise. Again, totally has the tool set to win. Appears to be a close fight. Bookmakers think it is. I think if Guskov is to win, it's going to be one-sided, as his recent fights have been. And I'm not going to go against him. Going to stick with him as betting underdog in this spot. Feel pretty good about it. And yeah, I think swarming Błachowicz pretty early in this one. All right. We will see. Moving on now to the preliminary portion of this event. We have a good fight at lightweight here between Grant Dawson and Manuel Torres. Dawson minus 220, the betting favorite in this spot, while Torres could be had plus 180, the betting underdog. This is another underdog that I'm interested in taking here this weekend, Manuel Torres. We did see him bought down. I saw like 160, 155 the price at some books. Now back at 180, where I will be placing my money on Torres. I have a lot of confidence in this kid. Maybe I shouldn't. Again, we saw him in kind of dynamic, brutal striking exchanges very early in each of his fights. First round finisher, kind of goes for it early, kill or be killed type fighter. Dawson, obviously elite grappling, somebody who could nullify that very potent offensive attack, take Torres to the mat, wear on him. And if this fight gets into rounds 2 and round 3, it should very clearly be Dawson winning. We've seen him against higher level opponents all throughout his career before. But for me, we've seen him knocked out before. Torres is a guy that has that power in his hands. And at a price like 180, I'm willing to take a chance on Torres connecting once again. The knockout of Drew Dober in his last performance, earning him a $50,000 bonus, but very impressed with his victory against Chris Duncan as well. Somebody we'll talk about on this card. His finishes early in his UFC career against Nicolas Mata and Frank Camacho, I get it. Not the highest level opponents that Torres has faced, but similar to Guskov, has a lot of momentum behind him. When the power is there, it's enough to put these guys out. And again, I think Dawson has that off button. We saw him getting caught just overconfident in the Bobby Green fight, but that's not nearly as lethal or capable a striker as a guy like Manuel Torres. Dawson knows what he needs to do in this matchup. He needs to grapple. He's not going to be stupid and try and stand and strike with Torres. But I think in the big cage, Torres should be able to find his shot. It will be early in round 1 if he does win this fight, but I think he's a super live underdog, and I'm willing to roll the dice going against a guy in Grant Dawson that just wants to grab your leg and wrestle for 3 rounds. So I'm going with Torres here, another underdog for me on this event.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. This fight's about as binary as it gets, though. Like, Torres is the much better striker. Dawson really not good technically on the feet at all. His chin's obviously a major concern. But the grappling that he's able to kind of impose on opponents is ridiculous. I don't mind the underdog shot, but I do think more likely than not, Dawson 8 is able to secure those takedowns, control this fight on the mat. And if he can't find the finish, either via submission or ground and pound, he could just ride him out for 15 minutes. Torres has been impressive. He's a good striker, but again, not really facing the level of opponent that he's going to be doing so here. I like Dawson. But the chin is just such a concern. Like, minus 220 is very scary. So I would proceed with some caution if you're trying to back him as a favorite. I am going to pick him here. I do think he's able to get it done, but I'd be lying if I said I was going to be afraid early. Torres does have tremendous power. Both these guys listed at 5'10". I feel like Torres is taller than Dawson by a little bit, though. The reach only listed at 1 inch as well. I feel like that's off, too. So I'm going to check some of these measurables, but that is what it is. Dawson averaging just under 4 takedowns per 15 minutes. I think he is going to be able to get them here early and often, but if he can't, Torres very live for that finish. But yeah, binary fights like this are tough because whoever really imposes their will is going to look like a much bigger favorite or much better value as an underdog than they were. But yeah, it's really that binary. Like if Dawson's not getting takedowns, he's screwed. If Torres can't avoid the takedowns, he's screwed. I'll go with the favorite here, having done it against a higher level of opponent than Torres has been able to kind of implement his own game plan against. So again, I'll be holding my breath, but backing the favorite in this one.
Really good matchup here next, also at lightweight. Here we have Chris Duncan, minus 180, slight favorite in this matchup against Terrance McKinney, who could be had at plus 145. This is a fight I think could finish a million different ways, but certainly likely to be over rather quickly. That is often the case with Terrance McKinney fights, very often decided in round number one. This particular matchup, I think McKinney will be very quick to shoot for an early takedown against a guy like Chris Duncan. He's extremely explosive early in his fights, whether that be with his hands looking to land a fast combination. But really, McKinney's best work is done quickly slamming opponents to the mat and then looking to impose ground and pound on them thereafter. Duncan has won as an underdog in 3 straight fights, but now is looking to close, minus 180. The odds could go either way in this matchup. I really feel better about picking Duncan if we get more of a 160 price, 165 price that some books are hanging right now. But the best bet in this fight is going to be the under, going like under 1.5 rounds, under 1 round here. These are 2 dynamic finishers. We've seen what Chris Duncan has been able to do since joining the UFC. Very impressive finishes against high-level opponents. Not only power in his hands, but Duncan has also won using the guillotine choke. Perhaps something he'll pull for if McKinney is going to shoot on him here early. Very confident in his own grappling. But I'd also have confidence in Duncan just a bit more in terms of his defensive awareness and his chin. He seems to be able to take a shot a bit better than McKinney, who has lost on 7 occasions, been knocked out a few times. Duncan should be able to also look much better here in rounds 2 and 3 compared to McKinney, who really only has 3-4 minute cardio, something that has improved throughout his career in the UFC. And with the grappling rounds McKinney puts in, he really shouldn't be getting tired if he does have to fight to a decision. It just is a tendency of his to really go after that finish early. So he has great equity to win this fight. There in round number 1. I just slightly favor Duncan. I think he's a little more skilled. But yeah, not confidently picking him in this matchup. Just definitely thinking this one goes under.
Yeah, I mean, I do kind of lean the under. Obviously, you're going to be paying a premium for it. But McKinney, I mean, it's always the same story. Either he wins the fight quickly, he gets it done early, or he loses via spectacular finish. Duncan, I mean, his chin coming into the UFC was a little bit spotty. He's been rocked at times. I mean, against Torres being... Actually, was that a submission? Regardless, it's tough. I think everyone this week's like, oh yeah, just live bet it. Like, just wait and see if McKinney starts to fade, and then you can get on Duncan. The issue is everyone knows that. The books know it. You're not going to get that value that everyone's kind of acting like is going to be out there. So I'm with you. I think I'd rather take the under than anything here. I do think Duncan's the much more skilled fighter of the 2, though. I think the gameplay here is pretty obvious. Just survive and advance to the point that you start to see McKinney fade a little bit, and then you can kind of take over from there. McKinney talking about grappling here aggressively, I don't really think that's his wisest game plan. I mean, Chris Duncan, his main training partner is Grant Dawson, who we just talked about. He's come a long way in his grappling. I think he can mostly keep this fight standing if that's where McKinney's going to go with it. And McKinney, who has had issues with his cardio, probably going to gas out much faster if he's pursuing those takedowns. So I'm on Duncan here, but again, the first few minutes are going to be terrifying. But I do think he's going to be able to extend this fight and then find a finish of his own, either late in the first round or early in the second. But again, should be a car crash, should be fun for however long it lasts. But I'm siding with Duncan.
Oh, yeah, that is definitely a good one. Next up, let's take a look at this women's flyweight matchup. This between Maycee Barber and Karine Silva. Barber minus 200, the betting favorite in this fight, while Silva could be had at plus 160. Nick, what are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, the most notable thing coming into this fight is the fact that Barber kind of backed out of her main event against, was it Blanchfield last time out? They were getting ready to walk out. And yeah, she couldn't make the walk. So you always have to question where her head's going to be at coming into a fight like this. Karine Silva is no joke. But I do think if we get the best version of Maycee Barber here, she's certainly going to be the side. Much better striker, puts out much more volume, better defensively, great elbows in the clinch. She really does everything well. Really good cage work, pushing her opponents up against the cage and reversing them if they try to do it to her. Karine probably the better grappler, but I don't think the gap there is too wide. I do think Silva could be able to find a few takedowns, but Barber does have kind of that grit and ability to work her way back to the feet. It's just tough to back her as the favorite. Again, coming off that lack of a performance her last time out, where she couldn't even make it out of the locker room. So I do think if we get Barber and her head's on her shoulders straight here, she's the side. Silva, the better grappler, but not by the type of margin that I think is enough to want to back her as the underdog. So yeah, maybe this is the live betting spot. If you see Maycee looks like herself, just go ahead and take her. And if not, maybe you jump on the Silva side. But I do think Barber's the much more talented of the two. And I think she's got a lot to prove coming off what happened to her last time out. So I think we see a good version of her here. All that being said, I mean, Silva is talented, but she is the older fighter in this matchup in spite of getting a more recent start to her UFC career. And while she has looked good, I mean, none of the wins are really anything close to the level of a Maycee Barber. So I'm going to be on Barber here. Probably not a play you'd want to be betting on, though, especially as a decent side favorite.
Yeah, definitely don't have much confidence myself picking this matchup, but I can't take Barber as, minus 200, minus even 180 here in the spot. I think Silva will be looking for the takedowns here against Barber, who does have better striking than her. Barber has been taken down in 6 straight fights, while Silva has scored at least 1 takedown in 6 consecutive fights on that side. So should be pursuing the takedown here, probably likely to get at least 2. And then it'll be up to Maycee to, get back to her feet. We've seen her take advantage of girls who do have, worse grappling than her on the mat. I think Maycee Barber is the all-around more talented, more skilled fighter. It just will come down to how Silva is able to implement her game plan versus Barber's. If there are, prolonged periods where Barber can get her hands going in this fight, I think she's a bit quicker. Going to be landing the more meaningful strikes if she can get that boxing going. Just, no confidence picking her here. Again, you had highlighted her pulling out of that main event fight against Blanchfield. And yeah, I think I would much rather play Silva as the betting underdog. A lot of the times these, close women's MMA fights, sometimes just saying, just go with the dog, should win half the time. But really feel here Silva has a good chance taking these scorecards, just given her grappling advantage, and then getting a plus 160 number, or perhaps even better than that. I'd really fault anyone for going the other side instead, or at least saying so with much confidence, because this should be a close one, and definitely a fight that I see going to the scorecards. Not the best fight there on this card here. We'll move on to a matchup at lightweight between Farès Ziam and Nazim Sadykhov. Both these guys have Z's in their names. Ziam minus 140, the slight betting favorite, while Sadykhov could be had at plus 115. This should be a good fight too, between two highly active strikers. Ziam does have a 6-inch reach advantage in this fight and stands 3 inches taller than Sadykhov. I think that gives him a slight edge as these two do look to strike. And 64% overall striking defense for Ziam, also likely to be a deciding factor, as these two are going to be exchanging a lot, likely on the feet. Perhaps Sadykhov mixing in his grappling to some extent in this fight. But if it is going to be a kickboxing bout for a large majority, Ziam having the advantage of length, the better counters, and again, the better striking defense should play all factors in him getting the decision win, or able to keep himself composed, find a knockout against an opponent like Sadykhov. I think he should be able to point fight well throughout this bout. And while Sadykhov does tend to move forward and pressure his opponents more than Ziam is able, just with his length, with that fast jab of Farès Ziam, he does well fighting his way off of the cage when he is put there. And again, with the full octagon to work, I would favor the slightly more technical kickboxer here. In what I view Farès Ziam, he's been on a good streak lately, putting together solid performances, even relying on his own grappling in some of these matchups, mixing it up well. So I think all good things from the Ziam side. Slightly favor him in this matchup, but again, a super close fight and not one that I'm betting with much confidence.
Yeah, this is one of the tougher fights in the card to call. I mean, stylistically, this is not the type of fight we see all that often. I mean, Ziem is a great kickboxer. He's going to be the longer fighter here, but Sadykhov is much more aggressive. He puts out more volume. He's going to try to push the pace. Um, Usually that does favor the kind of technical guy. Ziem only absorbs 1.6 significant strikes per minute. Um, but yeah, I mean, Sadykhov's such a dog. Like, as this fight wears on, I do think he can land the bigger shots. I think he has more power by a decent margin here as well. So really, there's a path to victory for both of these guys. This could be a fight of the night, or it could be Ziem kind of circling away and point fighting. I'm slightly preferring the Ziem side right now. This is a fight I do want to spend a little bit more time on. It's just such a tough one to call. Obviously, the height and the reach favor Ziem. I think the technical striking ability favors Ziem, but like every single intangible I kind of put on the Sadykhov side. Like, he's got grit, he's got toughness, he's willing to get knocked down and keep fighting. We've seen him take a ton of damage and just break guys off of sheer will, and I think he could do that against a guy in Ziem who kind of relies on keeping things pretty technical. So if Sadykhov can make it ugly, he's going to be very live to find the win here. But for now, I'm on Ziem reluctantly. Definitely a fight I do need to spend a bit more time on, though.
Okay, next let's take a look at this matchup at middleweight between Marvin Vettori and Bruno Ferreira. This fight is even money pick'em as it currently stands. Ferreira is known for his explosive power, but this matchup is interesting as Vettori has an all-time chin. Never before finished, throughout his long UFC career, fighting the best of the best, loser in, his past few matchups there in the promotion, but obviously decorated veteran, somebody who has competed with the elites in the division, and will prove a good test for Ferreira if he can finish a guy like Vettori. Really scratching my head with this matchup. Will this chin finally get cracked? Will Ferreira blow his load early? And will Vettori be able to take it over here in the latter half of the fight? I am siding with Ferreira. I think there are a few things that give him an edge over Vettori here. If the striking is not getting going for Ferreira, if he's not able to find that shot or really land any meaningful strikes on Vettori, I don't think he necessarily has to worry because Vettori is more of a volume fighter than somebody who really lands with significant power. I'm not really worried about the power coming back from Vettori and his overall boxing, threatening with putting Ferreira out with a single punch here in this fight. We've seen Ferreira run into counters and, make mistakes like that before, but I don't think he'll get punished for that in a matchup against Vettori. Notably as well, this is just a 3-round fight. Ferreira, if he does want to be super aggressive early, should be able to, bag those first 2 rounds, even if he does tire late against Vettori. It's not like this is the 5-round atmosphere where Vettori is used to and where his cardio can really shine. And then just additionally, Ferreira has upside with his offensive grappling as well. This is a jiu-jitsu black belt, somebody who has excellent judo, and somebody who has finished both of his previous matchups by submission. I don't really think he's going to be able to finish Vettori, but if he does, I would not expect the knockout. I think he'd be even more live to find a submission win against Vettori if he is able to get him down to the mat here with his grappling. But that's been tough to do throughout Vettori's career as well. So I'm very interested to see if Ferreira is able to pass this test. I'm picking him. I may bet him here at Pick'em. I'd much rather see him, perhaps get moved to an underdog as money comes in on this fight. But yeah, I'm siding with him to win. I think Vettori at this stage of his career too, kind of getting up there in age as well, on this losing streak. Not somebody I could confidently take at the betting window.
Yeah, here's another one where I'm going to be on kind of the vet and you're on the other guy. But the difference is Vittori's actually the younger fighter in this matchup. Vettori looked pretty good last time out against Brendan Allen. He's been dealing with a lot of issues outside of the cage, lost his brother. Dealing with some other controversies, things like that. He looked better than I expected him to against Brendan Allen. I do think he has a clear path here if he does lean on his grappling. Ferreira is a decent submission grappler. But Vettori in all his interviews this week, he's like, I don't know what I'm doing. He's like, I haven't been wrestling as much as I should. He's like, that's what got me to a title fight at one point. He's like, I really needed to just kind of lock in and get back to what got me here in the first place. And I think that's what we're going to see. Ferreira's greatest strength is that power, is that knockout shot. But Vettori's chin is absolutely absurd. Could it crack at any time? Sure. But is that something I'm going to predict to happen if we've never seen it before? No, honestly. it could play out closely. Again, Ferrer, not a terrible grappler, but I think Vettori can lay more volume. I think he can throw the leg kicks to the point that he can win enough exchanges on the feet to keep things competitive there, and then just seal rounds with takedowns. I do think Ferrer is more live for a finish, even as I'm backing Vettori and saying he's almost impossible to finish. But Vettori's the side for me here. I think he can get back in the win column. I think the UFC likes having him around. There's really no good Italian fighters like on the roster, even in the world. And Vettori's done a pretty good job in marketing for them, things like that. So I think they're giving him a spot here where he should be able to win, coming off 3 losses against ranked opponents. But if he can't, then it is what it is. But I'm going to back him here off of that Allen performance, albeit a loss. He was super competitive, and Allen's stock's been rising. And Vettori, if he can get back to his grappling, which is what got him here, I think he's going to be pretty effective. And some of Ferrer's strikes could be taken away here against Vettori. He was a southpaw, the body kicks, things like that. So I think stylistically, I like Vettori. At the same time, I mean, he's not in his prime anymore. So I got to proceed with some caution, as we are on many of these fights. But he's going to be the side for me here.
Moving on now to the next fight, this at lightweight. We have Jalen Turner, minus 300, the betting favorite, facing Edson Barboza, who could be had at plus 240 in this fight. I think it is impossible to bet Turner minus 300 given his past performances. Losing minus 270 against Renato Moicano, minus 300 against Dan Hooker, losing in his last time out against Ignacio Bahamondes. I get that Barboza's showing age now, clearly, 39 years old, not the prime striker that he used to be, but I'm still going to take the underdog in this matchup, taking Edson Barboza against Jalen Turner. Showing his age clearly. His right eye has like a big whelp here fight week before the fight even begins, swelling on his face. But just Turner is somebody who you cannot trust. He has good striking, fundamentally very sound, but if he's going to be standing looking to bang against an opponent the caliber of Edson Barboza, he could get knocked out. I mean, this is a guy who does still have very snappy kicks, great reaction time. He eats a bit too many shots, and that's where Turner does have the power advantage, can put out Barboza if he's lucky in this fight. But I think if he's going to be standing and striking with Barboza, he's putting himself in harm's way. Turner can wrestle Barboza. That's probably why he's the betting favorite in this spot. Just again, a guy who does not have reliable fight IQ, not somebody you could trust to make the right decision or, follow the game plan the coaches are yelling out throughout his fight. I would much rather trust my money with a seasoned but veteran in Barboza, who has done this a million times, who goes out there, fights consistently, despite losing in recent matchups, fighting admirably, eating a lot of strikes to the head, but, continuing to move forward and bang in the latter half of these fights with Drakkar Klose and with Lerone Murphy, who are still upper echelon fighters at lightweight. Whereas Turner just can't seem to hang with those guys, even when he's put in fights as a betting favorite against them. So I'm taking Barboza here as the betting underdog. One last time for the veteran, legendary in this division with the number of fights he's had and the number of guys he's faced. I think he could get it done this weekend. I like his chances against Turner.
It feels good to have you on the old guy in one. I think I've been on the old dude in a bunch of these, but I'm going to be on Turner here. Turner retired after his loss to Bahamondes. He was quickly submitted, but I mean, going through the losses here, and I know Hooker and Barboza fought back in the day, but if Barboza takes on the version of the guys that Turner's losing to, he's losing all of those fights, in my opinion. And I think he's winning even the fights that Barboza has been losing against someone like Drakkar Klose. That was just not a good performance. I don't rate Klose all that highly. And you got to remember, Barboza moved back up a weight class for that fight after losing to Lerone Murphy. And I don't think that was the right move for him. Turner seems to have his head on his shoulders. He found God. I mean, very religious all of a sudden, but he's the type of guy who needs something like that. He's always kind of been a bit of a head case. I like that for him. I think he's coming in here confident. He's going to have the reach. He's the much better grappler. I think that's what people are underrating here. If you could get a really big number on him by submission, I think that's pretty live. I think he could even find it in the first round like he did against the likes of, who was it, Brad Riddell. I mean, we've seen him go out there and do it against pretty high level of competition. And I think if both of these guys make weight, show up, I think Turner's just going to be so much bigger on fight night. And I love Barboza. He's one of my guys, but he just did not look good against close. And I didn't want him to move back up to 155. He was looking half decent down at 145. So kind of a weird spot. But I think Turner could probably find that early finish. As this fight gets extended, I do think Barboza's technical ability could maybe shine through. But the issue is his durability seems to be declining. You mentioned the cut or the eye, and like he looked really kind of sluggish against close late in that last fight. So I'm on Turner here. I think he's a bit rejuvenated, 9 years younger. And again, I hate when guys retire, but it sounds like he's fully locked in here once again. And yeah, I'm going to back Turner here as the favorite, but I'll give you one of the old vets. I've won plenty of them myself.
Moving on now to a fight at light heavyweight, we have Iwo Baraniewski minus 200, the favorite against İbo Aslan, who could be had at plus 160. I don't have too much to say in regards to this matchup. Two light heavyweights, capable strikers looking to, finish one another. Baraniewski, relatively new, signing to the promotion off of Dana White's Contender Series, undefeated prospect at 6-0, finishing all of his fights thus far, winning by knockout in his last 4 matchups. It appeared to me that İbo Aslan is somebody that's going to be cut next year from the UFC. His last fight against Billy Alakena was terrible. He lost. He was outlanded 35 to 28 significant strikes in that matchup. Just not trying at all, not really throwing any volume or anything of substance in that matchup. Baraniewski is somebody who will get after it, who is somebody who does have the power to finish his opponents in this weight class. I think we've seen it from Aslan before. It was a fight against, Kudalaba is taken to the mat and finished in that manner. But Baraniewski does have some solid grappling skills. If he does want to go that path, I think he might be capable. But with his hands too, I think faster, more potent, and definitely going to be more dangerous early than İbo Aslan. I think it's a very winnable fight in his debut. And after signing the kid off Dana White's Contender Series, I think they'd like to match him up with somebody that he can beat. I'd be siding with Baraniewski to win here against İbo Aslan, likely by a very early finish. I'm picking him by first round knockout here against İbo.
I like him in the first round. Be careful. I think he could also find the submission as well. But I'm pretty high on Iwo Baraniewski, and it's because of that Contender Series performance. The win he had, he was a massive underdog against the super prospect, this kid Muhammad Ali. Obviously not the Muhammad Ali. His name's spelled differently, but everyone was high on Ali going into that fight. He was a huge favorite. And Iwo just went out there and starched him. And usually we see these guys come in where all they do is just knock a guy out, knock a guy out. You got to worry about the cardio. You got to worry about the durability. But Baraniewski had this really extensive amateur career as well, where he won 16-3 and fought to a decision many times. He showed well-rounded game there. And since he's kind of gone into the pros now, he's that knockout artist. But knowing that he's had that experience on the amateur scene, grappling, extending fights, cardio, I mean, he checks more boxes than I think a lot of people thought he would coming into that fight against Ali. Aslan, I mean, it hasn't been all that impressive. I mean, when he came in, he was super aggressive, and that Killer Kilby style can carry you at light heavyweight to a point. But once he got finished by Kudalaba, he was so tentative last time out against Alakena. It's like that loss really messed with his head. And I think here, if you're tentative at all against Iwo, you're going to get absolutely clocked, whether he gets taken down and ragdolled and choked out or finished. I think Iwo Baraniewski, someone they're looking to build. A little bit of narrative, too. We got Jan Błachowicz on this card, one of the best Polish fighters in the world. Obviously, having Iwo here can help boost his stock a little bit. We got Wiklax coming off that win, not on this card, but just beating Patchy Mix. Maybe UFC gets back to Poland soon. They finally got a few fighters other than just Błachowicz, with JJ obviously retiring. Might be the time to go back there, but I like Iwo a lot. I think he could go pretty far in this division. Ibo on the other side, pretty funny how close their names are. UFC loves to do crap like this. I just think tentative style here is not the way. I think he'd be live if he was still kill or be killed, because it would just be a car crash in the middle, but Iwo is willing to kind of put his pedal to the metal here. I don't know that Aslan has that in him anymore. Aslan, they used to just put on all the Middle East cards. They were trying to build him over there. It's kind of telling they brought him in here into America for this one. So I like Iwo. I think he gets it done. Super impressed with the Contender Series, and then going back and kind of rewatching some film on him this week, even more so impressed. Like, without the view of like, Ali's so good, he's going to crush whoever he faces. Really kind of digging into what this kid could bring to the table out of Poland. I'm pretty impressed, and yeah, I think he could go pretty far here. So I like you a lot.
All right, next up, let's take a look at this matchup between middleweights. We have Mansour Abdul-Malik minus 1,200 against Antonio Trocoli, who could be had plus 800, the underdog. I mean, this matchup, a bit of a squash match. Trocoli, not somebody that inspires much at all from his performances thus far. Finished by Tresean Gore, finished by Shara Magomedov, likely to be finished by Mansour Abdul-Malik here this weekend. Such an insane athlete, Abdul-Malik. His last fight, a tougher one against Cody Brundage, that was overturned, ended by head clash, but a fight that he ultimately did win. A weird commission choice, in my opinion, that fight was overturned. But he saw some holes out of Abdul-Malik in that fight against an experienced fighter in Brundage, and hopefully he will learn to grow from that matchup and how he approaches these fights. Worth noting, Abdul-Malik, not always somebody to just bet on here. Round one props, finishing a lot of these fights round two, even extended into the third round against Brundage. Well, the market does favor him to win this fight in round one, minus 120. Perhaps, degenerate gamblers could look elsewhere. Take round two at plus 4-1 instead, 400. You could get Abdul-Malik in round two if Trocoli can last that long. And if Abdul-Malik does take a bit more measured approach instead of just looking to land a nuke very early. A nuke probably will land very early. I like the power out of Abdul-Malik, and certainly knows what he's doing. He's not just throwing haymakers in there, putting together decent striking combinations. And Trocoli is very little I think he could offer. Might look to grapple there, take him down in round one, but I think he's going to get finished inside of 2 rounds in this fight.
Yeah, I don't rate Trocoli at all. He's not a professional poker player, and I'm pretty sure he's using like Mackenzie's Dern money from a divorce or something. I don't know. There's a lot of weird narratives around this fight. Abdul-Malik is the much better fighter. He's better technically everywhere, but I know there's a lot of people on Twitter and in the community who think he's been kind of carrying opponents to overs in his fights. Obviously, this is speculative. This is all allegedly. I don't know anything that you don't listening to this, but people have said like it's kind of weird that he carried Brundage there. Like he should have finished the guys like Klein Todorovic even quicker than he did, and he hasn't taken on a very high level of opponent, but those fights are getting extended. He's a physical freak. He's good everywhere. He should be able to dominate most of these matchups, but he's taking his time to the point that it's a little bit fishy. I think if he fights at his best, he should steamroll Trocoli here, but I am a little bit concerned that maybe he tries to stretch it out a little bit. So I like Abdul-Malik to win me a finish. I think Trocoli's checked out. I think he's just going to go stay in Vegas and play poker, if I'm being completely honest. Nothing about his game has been all that impressive. Could not find a win at the UFC level. So I'm all over Abdul-Malik, but proceed with some caution. If there is a fishy fight on this card, I think it's this one. But maybe he knows now that people are onto him. He just steamrolls him here. I think Abdul-Malik's a really talented prospect. Just stay with the right people, man. It sounds like he's got some weirdos in his camp, but he's the much better fighter in this matchup by a ridiculous margin, in my opinion.
Okay, and now just one more fight for us to break down here. This at featherweight, we have Byron Santos minus 250 taking on Muhammad Naimov, who could be had at 2-1. Santos solid technical striking skills, better overall, I would say, in regards to his striking and counters. Impressed in his last performance. Close one, but a unanimous decision win for Santos against Sadiq Youssef. He's strung together wins since emerging victorious as winner of The Ultimate Fighter. I really like Santos, everything I've seen out of him. Elite counter striker, very fluid with his movement. Some comparisons drawn to young, Anderson Silva. We hear it all the time, but just the way he fights, his comfort in there, his ability to land those counters against his opponents, not necessarily potent knockout threat. And again, I don't think a knockout's going to materialize for Santos here against a tough opponent like Naimov. Naimov, known to move forward. Very, very strong, durable, nicknamed Hillman, but fighting out of Tajikistan, training in Denver, Colorado. That's a recipe for a guy who's got great cardio, able to push a pace, going to give you a hard fight every time out. Naimov likely to engage his grappling a bit here against Santos, but I've really liked Santos in terms of his counter wrestling, in terms of his ability to, use his footwork to create space against opponents, and back to a range where he's most comfortable and where most of his fights are won. I think he should be able to outland Naimov in terms of his strikes. Even if Naimov is putting forth the higher volume in this fight, Santos should be landing with much more accuracy. And I think his shots have great pop on him. Not necessarily, again, expecting a knockout to materialize, but I'm going to be continuing to back Myron Santos. I really think he has a bright future ahead as he continues to stack wins here in the UFC.
Yeah, I think the comparisons to Anderson Silva need to stop first and foremost. I mean, the thing is, he's a good striker. He's talented. They have similar builds, but the thing about Silva was he was just so swaggy and loose in there, and Santos is a little bit stiff at times. And I do think Santos is great. I think he's a talented striker, really talented kid. But this is a tough matchup because Naimov does have grappling ability. We saw the win over Barnes and Grad. He really leaned on that. I do think Santos is the side here. I think the UFC wants to build him, but I think the line is too wide, pushing -300. I was super impressed with his performance last time out against Yusuf, that being Santos. But I do think Naimov has the skills to keep this fight close. Lately, judges have not been scoring grappling position well over strikes and things like that. So I think Santos could pull away. I mean, the fight against Marshall is a great example of that. I thought Marshall won pretty convincingly. I think Naimov's going to try something similar here, but he's not really the same level of striker as a Marshall. And while I do think he could try to execute a similar game plan, probably run into the same issue if it goes to the scorecard. So I'm on Santos here. I think he gets it done. I think he lands some pretty big shots on the feet, but let's cool with the Silva comparisons. And I do think the line's a little bit too wide, just because there is a path for Naimov, who does remain a bit underrated in my opinion. Santos a bit overrated, but still, I'm going to pick Santos. I think he gets it done.
It should definitely be a good one here this weekend as we close out 2025. Last pay-per-view, UFC 323 from Las Vegas, Nevada. We appreciate all you watching. Be sure to check out our write-up with official picks and prediction for each of these fights come Saturday morning, and enjoy the fights this weekend. Good luck, everyone.